Good evening and welcome to Crossroads. Folks, we've been told it's a conspiracy to even suggest there's a problem of pedophilia among the global elites. We're told that the allegations of child sex abuse or the sex trafficking of children among political circles in politics and entertainment. We're told this is all groundless, nothing to see here, don't even talk about it. But we should ask in return, what about Jeffrey Epstein? Let's see, the convicted child sex offender who is shuttling global elites in politics, entertainment, and finance on his private airplane to his private island. Jeffrey Epstein allegedly killed himself in prison. Now, his closest associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, she was sentenced to 20 years in prison last June, get it, for sex trafficking of minors. Now, it's an odd situation in many ways because the list of clients and details of cases are still not being shown to the public. And people around the case keep turning up dead from alleged suicides, including shooting themselves with no gun apparently there. And the corporate media keeps telling us that any talk about these things is just plain old conspiracy. Well, regardless, Jeffrey Epstein keeps on hitting the headlines. The now deceased billionaire hedge fund manager with debatable sources of income owned 2 islands in the Caribbean. And you might have seen the one with the infamous temple-like blue and white striped structure on it, fixated with a golden dome and golden bird statues. And we're told that's totally normal, apparently. Now, after Epstein's death, his 2 islands went up for sale for $125 million. Both islands were just sold, and they were sold for less than half that price at $60 million. Folks, the islands are Great St. James and Little St. James, the latter of which, interestingly, was previously listed as a snorkel stop for the Disney Cruise Line. Disney, by the way, claims it had no connection to the island itself. It claims the island was just included in the cruise line description to, quote, identify areas where snorkeling would be available. But back to the point, who bought Jeffrey Epstein's islands? Well, that's Stephen Dekoff. He's the founder of private equity firm Black Diamond Capital Management, which last year reportedly managed $10 billion in assets. Dekoff himself has a net worth of $3 billion. He has new plans for Jeffrey Epstein's islands as well. Dekoff allegedly plans to build a 25-room luxury resort on the property. And he also claims, notably, that he never visited the island until after Epstein died in 2019. He told Forbes this, he said, quote, "I've been proud to call the U.S. Virgin Islands home for more than a decade, and I'm tremendously pleased to be able to bring the area a world-class destination, benefiting its natural grace and beauty." Meanwhile, back on Jeffrey Epstein himself, people are still wondering an important question. If he was really a prominent child sex trafficker working with the global elite, who were his clients? How do you have people get found guilty in prison? How do you have someone sex trafficking children and they get charged, they're guilty for it, they go to prison, but you're not told who they were selling the kids to? Well, we're still not being told that. But his black book of contacts is public, as are the flight logs on who traveled on his private jet. The Wall Street Journal also has something new. Wall Street Journal released 2 reports. They reveal details on this, including some of the names on his calendar. It notes in particular these include people he met with after he served jail time in 2008 for a sex crime with a minor. Remember how that ended, by the way? Jeffrey Epstein in 2008 for a sex crime with a minor, all he had to do was register as a sex offender, and then he served 13 months, not in prison, but in a work release program. It was a slap on the wrist, in other words. The new reports note that Epstein had 3 meetings for these new documents. With who? William Burns, the director of the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA. He got his CIA position under Biden in 2021. And he met 3 times with Epstein back in 2014. There was also the former White House counsel under President Barack Obama. That's Catherine Rumler. Also allegedly had dozens of meetings with Jeffrey Epstein. Wall Street Journal notes these meetings were after she left the White House, notably, and became a top lawyer at Goldman Sachs Group in 2020. It says that Epstein introduced her to some potential legal clients, including former Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates. Another individual he met with was Noam Chomsky, professor and political activist, who was scheduled to fly with Epstein and then have dinner at his Manhattan townhouse in 2015. When asked by the Wall Street Journal about this, Chomsky said in an email, quote, "First response is that it's none of your business or anyone's. Second is that I knew him and we met occasionally." Now there's also Leon Botstein, the president of Bard College, who invited Epstein to the campus. It says this as well. Wall Street Journal notes that Epstein brought a group of young female guests along with him. Not only that, but Botstein had about 24 meetings scheduled with Epstein. Interestingly, none of these names were in Epstein's black book or in the flight logs. And a follow-up article from Wall Street Journal also describes Epstein's meetings with other people, including filmmaker Woody Allen and with Lawrence Summers, that's the former director of the National Economic Council under Barack Obama. Meanwhile, there's also a possibility that others tied to Epstein could face criminal charges. A federal judge with the Southern District of New York recently determined in March that banks can now be sued for profiting from Epstein's sex trafficking. This includes, interestingly, Deutsche Bank, which is accused of knowing that Epstein was running a sexual abuse network with underage girls, yet allowed his crimes to continue. And JP Morgan Chase is also facing a lawsuit with the same accusation. And another lawsuit filed by the government of the U.S. Virgin Islands. It also alleges that JP Morgan turned a blind eye to Epstein's sex trafficking operation. That court filing alleges that JP Morgan executives knew about what was happening. Remember that case? We discussed that before. The district attorney who brought those charges was fired by the Virgin Islands governor, Albert Bryan, shortly after the lawsuit was filed in late December. That was, I'm sure, no coincidence, at the same time that Biden and his family were also visiting the Virgin Islands. Now, it seems like long after his death, there are still many questions left to be answered with Jeffrey Epstein. Folks, stay tuned after the break. We're going to talk about the U.S. Navy's new drag queen digital ambassador and how the military just can't figure out why people don't want to enlist. Welcome back, folks. The U.S. military is facing a recruitment crisis, with Russia declaring it's in a hot war with the West and the Chinese Communist Party threatening to invade Taiwan, and America probably being caught in the middle of this. Well, that could be a real problem for the all-volunteer fighting force of the United States. During the last fiscal year, the Army missed its recruitment goal by around 25%. Now, practically speaking, that doesn't put us in like a huge, issue technically. Their goal was to have 476,000 soldiers. They're now projected to have around 445,000 and 452,000 in end strength numbers coming in September. But the big concern is what will happen if that trend continues. The U.S. Marines don't seem to be having any issues, but the Marines are also kind of awesome. I grew up in a Marine household, of course. As for the Navy and the Air Force, though, things are not looking so hot. The Navy had to increase its enlistment age from 39 to 41 years old. The Air Force got a boost in recruitment from the film Top Gun Maverick, but even despite that, both of them are facing challenges, and both are expecting to face deep holes in enlistment this year. So what's the solution? Well, maybe help the projection of more patriotic films, tell the American story, maybe remind younger generations of why they should fight to defend the U.S. Constitution and what it stands for. Well, no. The Pentagon is instead doing something different. The Pentagon is doing a review to loosen the requirements. It's taking a second look at whether the 250 issues that can get you disqualified from serving in the military are really all necessary. And interestingly as well, they're turning to TikTok to recruit, and they're also trying to show a new image of the American Armed Forces. And the U.S. Navy is now embracing what many U.S. Marines suspected all along. The Navy has now promoted a non-binary drag queen as its digital ambassador. Joshua Kelly, whose stage name is Harpy Daniels, has been posting short videos on TikTok and other social media sites to sell the appeal of the Navy to younger generations. He's even performed in drag on the aircraft carrier U.S. Ronald Reagan with the U.S. Navy in 2017 and 2018. In a recent post on TikTok, he wrote this: "The Navy has a diverse group of people, including non-binary, trans, and queer people. No haters can stop us." Watch this.
Settle down, are you kidding? I'm at the top of my game. I'm right up there with the big dogs. Girls, come on. Leave the saving of the world to the men? I don't think so. I don't think so.
Well, is it going to work? Well, the Navy is expected to fall about 8,000 people short of its recruitment goal this year. The main recruits are often people just getting out of high school, and they're likely looking at what kids are being shown and being taught in school to decide what they want in terms of what they're looking for. It's likely the Navy is trying to appeal to LGBTQ youth and trying to represent itself as a new so-called safe space. So what's the problem with that? Well, the military has never been a safe space. In fact, it shouldn't be. The military is very much about putting yourself in harm's way. It's about war. And that often, folks, entails, as General Patton suggested, either dying for your country or making someone else die for their country. For many Americans, it gives the appearance the fighting nature of the U.S. military is being sacrificed for political and woke interests. And American adversaries are taking note of this. The Russian military, for example, they just launched a video ad campaign to lure more quote-unquote real men, perhaps a direct snub at the direction the U.S. military is barreling towards. Well, folks, that's all for tonight. Thank you for joining us in this new version of Crossroads. Again, weeknight 7 p.m. Eastern Time on epochtv.com. In the next couple weeks, remember, we're going to be adding interviews, more segments to the show, so stay with us. And folks, again, that's starting May 15th. We're going to be broadcasting simultaneously both on Epoch TV and on NTD Cable. For updates, also follow us on social media at Crossroads_Josh. And as always, stay informed and stay free.